We are talking about fructose today. Fructose is one of the monosaccharides that is contained in fruit in large quantities, and lately it's been criticized and associated with bad health effects. Many people who lead a healthy lifestyle now are influenced by the notion of that fructose is an unhealthy component, the overconsumption of which can lead to unwanted conditions, such as fatty liver hepatosis, which in its turn will lead to insulin resistance and systemic inflammation, obesity, diabetes type 2, hypertension, kidney damage, and expedited aging process. In general, the idea is such that the fructose is one of the worst nutrients ever. Let's look into the subject and figure out whether it's really so. Do we really need to limit our fructose consumption or not? The idea of that the fructose can be harmful to our body comes from the fact that the fructose, once absorbed in the intestine, is quickly captured by the liver in its entirety, whereas glucose can be processed by the muscle tissue that requires glucose for its energy. So fructose is digested and now moves to liver.
Depending whether we have the energy deficit in the body or not, fructose, once it gets in the liver, can go through one of these two metabolic pathways. The first one, let's call it the good pathway, is when the fructose is simply used to satisfy the energy deficit in the body. And in this case, it doesn't really matter whether it is fructose or glucose. Their pathway is going to be the same. The fructose goes through a chain of preliminary reactions, fructose 1-phosphate, and then a number of other reactions, turns into the substance called glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, and further on this substance can participate in Krebs cycle, which is also known as citric cycle. First it turns into pyruvic acid, then participates in citric cycle, and the end result is the production of energy, the ATP molecule. If the energy needs are sufficient, then the substance glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate will turn into glycogen. As you see, both fructose and glucose in this chain of metabolic reactions have one and the same point of destination in the liver metabolic activity, which is glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. So the good metabolic pathway for the fructose is implemented when there is a deficit of energy experienced by the body. On the contrary, if there is no deficit in the body and the liver is sufficiently saturated with glycogen and the individual has satisfied all the energy needs by having enough of nutrition, but on top of it they choose to load with some fruit additionally, and not for the reason of energy needs, but for the reason of craving and experiencing pleasure, in that case the bad metabolic pathway will be activated, and consequently the substance glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate will turn into triglycerides. So the activation of the bad pathway will present with transformation of fructose into triglycerides through triacylglycerol, and these triglycerides will be converted into lipoproteins of low density and further convert into the fatty tissue that will be accumulating within the liver, causing fatty liver hepatosis. Also, the byproduct of fructose metabolism is uric acid in small amount. So whether the fructose will go through the good metabolic pathway or the bad metabolic pathway doesn't really depend on fructose itself. Fructose has nothing to do with it. It solely depends on the condition of the body, whether it's deficient in energy or it's overloaded with energy in the form of stored reserves, whether it's glycogen or fat adipose tissue.
Now you know which pathway the fructose will go through in your body, particularly in the liver. The key point here is the current health status of the individual that defines whether they are capable of processing the fructose for the benefit or it will turn to be harmful. And the factors here are the excess weight, resistance to insulin in any stage, large amount of calories, and low activity lifestyle. Then, of course, the surplus of energy that is supplied through nutrition and exceeds the daily needs, including fructose. Of course, it will be harmful and causing the negative health effect. Under this condition, the fructose going through the bad metabolic pathway will be accumulating as the fat tissue in the liver. One thing here to mention is that all these studies about fructose and its harmful effect were conducted on population who primarily lives in the United States and consumes the large amount of modified fructose in the form of artificial sweeteners, syrups, sweet drinks, fruit drinks made of concentrates, as well as the refined fruit juices, high fructose corn syrup, and not just whole fruit and whole products. And also we need to keep in mind that the diet consisting of heavy refined starches, pizza, burgers, and other unhealthy refined foods, refined polymeric carbohydrates, in combination with animal products and animal byproducts, will degrade the value of the fresh fruit fructose, pushing it into the bad metabolic pathway, and ultimately be harmful. But under the condition the individual goes on a healthy nutrition, and by that I mean reducing all the unhealthy foods, refined carbs, and animal products, if they do detox and cleansing for some significant amount of time, without taking any fruit initially, but while shedding off toxins and restoring and rejuvenating tissues and organs, primarily kidneys, liver, and intestine, then the fruit in its time will only be beneficial, giving good health results. Some of the studies, and I'm going to leave the links below, also confirm that the consumption of fresh fruit fructose in the proper manner increases the insulin sensitivity in people with diabetes type 2 and reduces the chances of fatty liver. It cuts down on adipose tissue inside of it. The conclusion, it's not the fructose from fresh fruit that should be considered as a bad ingredient, but the processed fructose in syrups, drinks, and artificial sweeteners. This condition should play the most important role in understanding of fructose. One of the most significant features of fresh fruit fructose, as well as glucose, is presence of prana. We always talk about the vibrant life force in the living foods that keeps all the enzymes, vitamins, cofactors, minerals, and phytonutrients of those foods active, allowing the foods to basically digest themselves without requiring much of the energy investment into the digestive process. On the contrary, it receives the enhanced amount of pure energy that practically leaves no traces of metabolic waste behind. Fresh fruit fructose taken correctly does not require the release of insulin. It quickly turns into pure energy, readily available for the tissues. Glucose, on the other hand, does require some of the insulin utilized. Processed fructose and glucose, as well as incompatible combinations that destroy the properties of fresh fruit and disintegrate prana, will ruin the proper energy conversion and cause the well-known bad effects. Fresh fruit fructose is beneficial if taken correctly in the morning, on empty stomach, and before consuming any other foods, especially complex proteins and fats, and under the condition that the body is ready to go on fresh fruit after having gone through a period of special preparation, detox and cleanse, rebalancing the digestion, tonifying the digestive tract, getting rid of conditions such as leaky gut, some of the fungal infections inside the intestines, then fresh fruit fructose will support and promote your health. For example, 2 pounds of apples contain about 3 ounces of carbohydrates, 2/3 of which is fructose and 1/3 is glucose. So 2 ounces of fructose and 1 ounce of glucose. If a person eats this whole amount of apples, nothing terrible will ever happen. And when the individual doesn't exceed the energy limits during the day, meaning that they're not receiving more than they're using, and they follow the proper nutritional schedule, then they can actually have up to 8 ounces of fructose a day without having any adverse effects, but the other way around. In the description, you can find the results of research that talks about 2,000 people who over a few years consumed large amount of fruit in their diet, and it's been observed that the insulin sensitivity was increased and the amount of fat tissue in the liver was significantly reduced. It has been proven through multiple people's experience that the fruit diets are healing and sustainable, that the fresh fruit fructose does not cause any adverse health effect if taken correctly. The test markers do not deviate from normal ranges, even in the long run. I have experienced the beauty and the effects of Fruitarian diet firsthand. The test showed no deficiencies. My energy and activity level multiplied, endurance and mental clarity enhanced, and many other improvements came along. I'm happy to share my own experience and help others. The main stipulation of this video is that the raw living foods produce completely different effects on the digestion and overall physical and mental health than their cooked versions. Nutrients, when cooked, lose their natural form and organic component, and that is the main factor in disease development. But having attachments to things that we crave for we lose the ability to clear judgment.
If you find this video helpful, please give it a like, share it with your family and friends, subscribe to our channel, and get notifications. Also, leave a comment of at least 8 words. Comments make difference.